everyone. We are here again with an exciting topic of discussion. And today's topic is India's foreign policy doctrine. And our focus will be on cultivating Europe. Our distinguished speaker today is Dr. Adityanjee. He is the President of Council for Strategic Affairs. You can visit his website, the Council for Strategic Affairs.org, to learn more about his organization. So welcome Dr. Adityanjee, welcome to our platform.
Thank you, Mr. Hari Prakash ji. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me again on your platform. And I'm pleased to be here to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. So coming to the topic, the partnership between India and Europe presents a range of opportunities and challenges in the current global scenario. Opportunities lie in the economic collaboration, trade, shared values such as democracy and multilateralism. Strengthening ties in these areas can contribute to mutual growth and stability. However, both the countries face challenges too, like divergent economic policies, regulatory differences, and historical complexities. Navigating these issues require diplomatic efforts to find common ground and foster a more robust partnership. Climate change, technology, and global health are potential areas where collaborative efforts can yield positive outcomes for both the countries, India and Europe. The India-Europe partnership holds promise for addressing global challenges, but overcoming economic and historical hurdles will be essential for realizing its full potential. Diplomatic engagement and strategic cooperation can pave the way for a more dynamic and mutually beneficial relationship. So, Dr. Adityanjee, with this background, I am coming to you with my question. What roadmap do you suggest to the government of India to establish a better relationship with the European Union?
Thank you for asking me that question. I just want to clarify, one thing. In your opening remarks, you did mention both countries, India and Europe. Europe is not a country, Europe is a continent.
Yes, sir. Yes.
I think what you were referring to was relationship between India and European Union.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Exactly.
The relationship with European Union is somewhat complicated. And I'm going to quote one of the quotes of our foreign minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar. He said, Europe has to grow out of the mindset that Europe's problems are the world's problems, and the world's problems are not Europe's problems.
Yes, sir. Yes.
That's a very famous one-liner by Dr. Jaishankar.
Yeah.
And that epitomizes what is the problem with European Union and why it has been so difficult for India to cultivate a better relationship with European Union. So before advising Government of India what it can do to improve the relationship with European Union, I will again go back to Dr. S. Jaishankar, whom I say is a thinking Minister of External Affairs, an academic Minister of External Affairs, who again wrote a line, and I will quote it verbatim. This is the time for us means India, to engage America, manage China, cultivate Europe, reassure Russia, bring Japan into play, draw neighbors in, extend the neighborhood, and expand traditional constituencies of support.
Yes.
So what he's talking about is the task is at this point in time to quote unquote cultivate Europe while reassuring Russia.
Yeah.
Those are contradictions there.
Right.
There are contradictions. We have seen since Second World War, Europe and Russia or its predecessor state, Soviet Union, were mutually highly antagonistic. And even now, the European Union is highly antagonist to the Russian Federation. So while you are trying to cultivate the European Union, you may not be on the same wavelength with European Union as far as the Russian Federation is concerned. So that generates problems. You already have to balance relationship with Russia against balancing relationship with United States, and also keep in mind Russia's burgeoning relationship with China, who is our strategic adversary. So relationship with European Union cannot be seen in isolation. Of course, there are no zero-sum games in international geopolitics. Each relationship stands on its own merits. But before we can even think about, how to cultivate Europe, we have to see what are the historical bottlenecks or roadblocks while we try to cultivate European Union further. And by talking about those historical bottlenecks, I by no means wish to indicate that relationship with European Union is not important, nor do I wish to indicate that the relationship with European Union is a dead horse, but there are unstated challenges. As we know, without understanding the history, we cannot decide about the future or the current geopolitics.
Yes, right, sir, right.
And historically, European Union or its members or its constituents were colonial powers. And they were the countries that had colonized Africa, Asia, pretty much whole of India by different European powers. And for namesake, the word has got decolonized, but European mentality has not changed. That continues to influence the relationship between European Union and India because of different perspectives.
Yes,
What has actually happened that physical colonization has been replaced by intellectual colonization. So we have to understand how intellectual colonization works. What Europe has done, they have weaponized the concept of human rights and religious freedom. So if they cannot occupy your territory, they can put sanctions on you on the issue of human rights and religious freedom, because their understanding of those two concepts is different from India's. They have also weaponized the issue of labor standards, and they have indulged in what I'll call trade fundamentalism. There was a time when world wanted to talk about free trade. Then they started to talk about free and fair trade. Now they are talking about, ethical trading, without violation of human rights, without use of, poor labor standards and all. And they have preferential systems by which they, select one country over the other. Now that creates a problem that does away with the concept of fair trade. If you are going to try to, use a benchmark on climate standards in trading, or you increase the cost of production by putting artificial barriers. Also, the cultivation of relationship with EU has to be understood in terms of Europe and European Union's romance with China. They had accepted China when America opened to China. European Union followed suit uncritically and supported China and brought it into WTO, and we are facing the consequences. Also, one has to realize that European Union has a penchant for intellectual arrogance. We set the standards, we set the trade standard, we set the climate standards, set the labor standards, and that creates problems in burgeoning trade with Europe. Europe does not realize that it is a declining power. Having said that, yes, Europe or European Union is a declining power. They are still punching above their relative weight in the international arena. They have a lot of soft power by which they manipulate the international standards and international systems. You might have seen that in this Ukraine-Russia war, they use their, interbanking mechanism SWIFT to cut Russia out. It has implications for India.
Yeah.
They criticize India for purchasing discounted energy or oil from Russia. And they vehemently criticize India, yet they continue to buy the same thing from Russia. So your unilateral sanctions are meant for others, not for yourself.
Yeah.
That tells you the hypocrisy in the attitude of European Union. And if I may say, the epitome of European arrogance is propping up, silly figures internationally to spread a rhetoric, whether it's on climate or human rights or whatever. So there are two examples. One is Greta Thunberg, who was preaching to India about following the science. I don't know what is her understanding of science. And second is Malala Yousafzai.
Yeah.
So European Union keep on manipulating the international discourse. Essentially, they hijack it to their own advantage. So the goalposts keep on shifting. And it's very difficult to do business with the European Union because of that. So they don't want to enter into negotiations with India for early conclusion of a free trading agreement with the European Union. And that is creating difficulty.
I see.
So we have to keep all these things into background while we are trying to cultivate Europe. And again, I'm saying it doesn't mean that we should not cultivate Europe. We should continue to do so. It does not mean that relationship with European Union is a dead horse, stop flogging it. Keep on doing, but don't have very high expectations of return. They are not going to relax their standards for services, which are main export of India, because they feel that they are very strong on services themselves. But issue comes up when they bring human rights, labor standards, things like that into the equation while negotiating trade issues. So that is where we are.
I think this is more about the mentality of the Europeans actually. They are better, they have higher standard, and the India don't match up to them. So do you think in near future it will be changing anyway?
Well, that is why the relationship is predicated on European attitude. And European attitude, is highly, highly hypocritical. They accepted China with full open arms. At one point in time, they were totally, sort of indulging towards China. Although China had human rights problems, China did not have democracy, China used, prison labor, but they vie against each other to have good trade relationship with China because they are getting cheaper products from China. Unfortunately, that flexibility goes away when they are dealing with India. So Europe has very, very inflexible attitude vis-a-vis India on labor, human rights, environmental standards. And there are differences in environmental standards and Europe's imposition of extraterritorial corporate due diligence creates challenges in finding a common ground. So the ball lies in Europe's court, in European Union's court. And I think it might be better off for India to have a bilateral free trade agreement with individual countries, specifically, I would say, with Britain, that is no longer in European Union. But coming to a mutually beneficial trade deal with Europe is fraught with roadblocks. And I don't have very high hope at this point in time, because India's situation is very different from Europe's. You know, we do everything on the cheap side. And some of the esoteric standards on human rights, religious freedom, etc., or civil society issues, cultural situation is very different. And Europe keeps on bringing these issues into every bilateral relationship. So yes, Europe is a big trading bloc. And if you see Europe's imports from China, they are much higher as compared to those from India as a proportion of GDP. Will that situation change in near future? I really hope so. But what I'm trying to say is that the onus lies more on Europe to show some flexibility and maturity in understanding that all said and done, India remains as a democracy with common law, a thriving judiciary. China remains an opaque, closed system. So as India is becoming a manufacturing base, more and more, Europe needs to open up to Indian products without bringing other artificial standards into the benchmark.
So one after question I have in mind, but I think this is very much related. The way a big group were talking about the de-dollarization. So when the BRICS currency is introduced and the de-dollarization starts, the situation will change.
What was the question? Can you repeat the question? When the BRIC currency starts?
When the BRICS currency starts and this de-dollarization just start rolling in, do you think with that phase there will be a change in attitude of this countries of the European continent?
I think those are somewhat unrelated issues. De-dollarization has already started. The greatest impetus for de-dollarization was given by United States itself. When you put so many restrictions and conditions, eventually the international system has to trade, whether you like it or not. You put unilateral sanctions. So de-dollarization has already started. And India is trying to, trade in local currencies with some other countries, including UAE. There is some trade with Russia. India wants to use rupee. They want, in dirhams or in yuan. But de-dollarization has already started. Nobody can stop it. Yes, dollar will remain a major currency, but it will not be the only international currency. As far as BRICS currency is concerned, I am very leery about it. BRICS currency would be entry of China by backdoor. Because BRICS Bank, the NDB, is controlled by China. It is headquartered in Shanghai. And if at all a BRICS Reserve Bank is created, I'm pretty sure China will maneuver it to be headquartered in China, either Shanghai or Wuhan or Chengdu or wherever. So while we make noises for BRICS currency, India would be much better advised to trade in local currency and use our flagstaff UPI system, okay, and rupee system for payments uh, with European countries as well. So we need to tell European countries that maybe you need to trade with us in rupee terms, or dollar should not be the only currency, or we can trade in maybe third nation currency like dirhams or things like that. I don't think in the long run it is advisable for India to prop up a BRICS currency which will benefit China. So we have to think of long-term consequences of our actions. Propping up a BRICS currency would be short-sighted in the long run.
I see. The similar view has been also given by some other experts earlier when I spoke to them. It's better for India to just push forward our own currency, not to stress the.
I would definitely agree. Actually, in 1947, when India got power transferred from Imperial Britain to Jawaharlal Nehru's government, and I'm deliberately not using the word independence because it was transfer of power,
Yeah.
Indian rupee was legal tender all over the Middle East and in a number of countries in Southeast Asia. Indian rupee was a legal tender. But gradually we ceded that space because of faulty policies of the government of India. Now we are opening up again. So we need to continue to, in bilateral trade, especially in the region, in the Indian subcontinent region, we need to promote trade using rupee mechanism. There's no reason why we cannot trade with countries like Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh using rupee mechanism. Why should we use dollar mechanism? We hardly have any trade with Pakistan, but if at all we develop trade relations with the new government in Afghanistan that we do not recognize, maybe countries like Burma and Thailand also, we could actually trade in Indian rupee. So we need to keep that in perspective. So we have to make actually rupee a regional tender. I'm not saying international tender. It would be very costly, cost prohibitive to make Indian rupee at this point in time an international legal tender or international convertible currency. But at least in the Asian region, we should try to do trade in rupee terms. That would be to our advantage.
So, in your opinion, which are the country in the European continent that are supposed to be friends of India?
If I may say, there are no permanent friends, there are only permanent interests. So at this point in time, if you see, Greece is a good friend. It's a small country, but it is a good friend. Similarly, Cyprus is a small island, but it is a good friend. But we know who are the adversaries. You cannot take Germany as a friend, although we have friendly relationships, but when it comes to policy issues, Germany does not support India. France has been a friend in a sort of way with the strategic partnership. There are some of the East European countries that we should cultivate, that we can cultivate, the smaller Balkan countries. I'm pretty sure we could have very good relationships with countries like Serbia, that are under sanction from the West Europe and from United States. So we have to play this game country by country and develop alliances. So they cannot be a kind of broad canvas in which we can take relationship with Europe. There'll be good relations with some countries. There will not be so good relationship with other countries. But what we have to see is that we have to protect and safeguard the national interest. I'll give you a small example. There's a country like Norway. Now, Norway is a liberal champion of democracy, human rights. It's a very small country, but it keeps on poking its nose into affairs of other countries. It punches way above its weight. It has been critical sometimes about India on human rights. Norway projected itself into Sri Lankan crisis, and supporting the LTTE in a major way, but they use this opportunity to spread Christianity and Christian conversion of Tamil tigers. So you need to see what they are aiming for, what is their motive, what they are trying to do. On the other hand, we can have good, relations with small countries like Lithuania, Latvia, which are kind of adversaries of Russia at this point in time. So we have to look at the merits and demerits of cultivating a particular country and how it helps her. At this point in time, it is India's good interest to cultivate Italy. Why? Italy, under this right-wing government, cancelled, scrapped the BRI with China. So it's a good opportunity to cultivate Italy, in terms of trade. China will retaliate against Italy, and the trade may be affected between China and Italy. So we need to use the opportunity to our own advantage.
Right.
That's how geopolitics works. Don't be swayed by the high-flown rhetoric about, lofty ideals and things like that. Ultimately, it's the narrow national interests that determine how your policy goes. There's a quasi-European country called Turkey, which has been highly inimical to Indian interests. Whatever you do, because they have their Islamic agenda.
Yeah.
So you have to guard against what Turkey is doing and not, fall into their trap, because on every international fora, Turkey has voted against India or criticized India and, actually worked against the geopolitical interests of India. In, when India's membership into nuclear supplier group, Turkey was one of the countries that objected to India's membership in nuclear supplier group. And they hyphenate India with Pakistan, with everything, that if it is done for India, it should be done for Pakistan. So, although Turkey is a member of NATO, it is an aspiring member of EU, it is not a member of EU because EU also keeps it away with a barge pole because of the Islamist agenda. But I'm just giving this as an example that how you need to see who is your potential partner and who is a hidden enemy or overt enemy.
Yes. So this was the question for this session actually. So thank you so much for your time, sir. We are going to wind up this session and then again we will be meeting in some time.
Thank you, Hari Prakash ji. I hope this was useful.
Yeah, very much useful because this is a very important topic and we are looking forward to this session for a long time actually. So
Okay.
thank you, Bhaiya. Thank you so much for your time. So
Thank you very much indeed.
Yes.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.